This is Marketing Careers Uncovered, and I'm Dave Hayward. One of the common areas we've flagged throughout various conversations, and an area that's really vital for marketers looking to do well in their jobs, is the ability to write good content, understand what good looks like for your audiences, and essentially deploy that through the most effective channels. It's even more important nowadays to get a handle on some of these basics, especially in a world where AI can spit out something which looks and sounds vaguely intelligent. And really nailing and understanding some of those fundamentals can help you go far. My guest today has built a really great career by focusing on the language, style, and formats of content and copy that make people ultimately take action. Alice Brown is with me today, and we'll be taking a little look at what she's up to, how she got there, and some of the ways she works and thinks about her work to get the best results. Alice, why don't you give us a little bit of an intro to you and what you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. My story started back when I worked at surf school, and it was my work experience. I'd learned to surf as a kid, and I wanted to spend more time on the beach. It's a brilliant environment, and it takes away all of those stresses of everyday life. You just watching the waves, waiting for the waves. And I was obsessed with surf coaching. And all the way through university, I continued surf coaching. And my job every day was to make people feel comfortable, make them believe in themselves to overcome an obstacle or a hesitation or get out of their comfort zone. And working in surf schools, it's really a seasonal job, and it before Easter and after October half term, there's not much going on. So I thought, how can I be a bit more helpful to these surf schools? I think I read every single Neil Patel blog that existed and thought, okay, how can I write some content for these brands to help them get more business and extend their season, as well as get myself some more work as well on top of the surf coaching. And so I started to translate these fears, obstacles, hesitations that my clients in the water had into pieces of content. And that started off with writing blogs. And we got really good response. People resonated with the problems we were talking about. And as I moved into the world of marketing, I realized that that's exactly what I do every day. I help people overcome obstacles, hesitations, fears, whether they are literal physical dangers or their emotional barriers. They might be slightly irrational barriers. They exist nonetheless. But my job now today as a marketer is, no matter what I'm trying to encourage someone to do or what action to take, what are those obstacles and hesitations standing in their way, and how can we address that? So today that looks like messaging strategy and copywriting, but it's very much based in those real life experiences where someone was scared to go out of their depth in the water or embarrassed to put a wetsuit on that 20 other people have pissed in. And so it's a bit of a weird random journey to being a marketer today, but it very much informs my process and my thought process working with clients.
And if you could paint a little bit of a picture to day-to-day working with your clients, what does a typical day in the life of Alice look like?
I am very lucky to live down in Cornwall, just 5 minutes walk from Fistral. So there's always a dog walk involved at the moment, even though it's February, which is unheard of. It's really beautiful weather. So spending time outside in between projects, giving myself mental clarity is so important for me. Again, it goes back to me being a surfer and enjoying being in the outdoors, trying to get surfs in between meetings just to be that recalibration process. So then on the work side of things, probably 30 to 50% of my week is actually marketing myself and business development, and the rest of the week is client work. So the kinds of jobs that I might be doing for clients is looking at their messaging strategy or creating messaging strategy and understanding the elements of the brand that are going to resonate with a particular audience. What are those obstacles and hesitations that they experience? How can we address those in web copy, email sequences, things like that, to bring more people on board and help people get out of their comfort zone and feel confident making a decision by trusting in the brand that I'm working with.
So you've really done a great job of piecing together, the two things that you really love and value, and value most, and make them work together. What's your favourite bit of that whole equation?
Apart from surfing between meetings, and also very occasionally having clients that will move meetings when the surf's good because they are also surfers, that is definitely a perk to the job.
That's helpful.
The actual work side of things, my favourite part is finding big ideas for clients. And when I say big ideas, I mean an idea or a phrase or an analogy that someone can pin an entire campaign on, or just even a landing page on, something that could span, multiple platforms, but understanding why their customers come to them. So this is really rooted in customer interviews and getting everything from their perspective, understanding what their decision-making process is to trusting a brand or buying a product, unpicking that and pulling out those little gems from those conversations with real humans and real customers that describes the brand or sees an aspect of the brand that they themselves had never thought of before. So, for example, I'm working with a free diving company at the moment who are based in South Africa, and having had a interview with one of their past customers, I asked them what motivates them to go free diving. And they said, after a bit of digging and going down underneath the layers, we found that they thought of it as their regulator, sort of mental health aspect of being underwater, no distractions. It's perfectly quiet and serene. You're relying on yourself and your breath to stay underwater a bit longer. And they said that process was like their regulator. So regulating their mental health, regulating, all the distractions and chaos from the outside world. And to me, that just sparked this brilliant idea of, right, regulator. It's a really interesting concept because that's something you would normally associate with scuba diving, whereas free diving is totally different because you're not relying on equipment, you're relying on yourself. And that sort of dichotomy I thought was such an interesting idea that it's really helping us drive the messaging in one of their email sequences. So think for me, the thing I love the most is finding those big ideas that come from human conversations. It's not something that AI can come up with if you ask it a few questions. They are only going to come about from a one-to-one conversation with another human being. They're unexpected and are quite exciting sometimes because, it's a different perspective that the brand had never thought of before. So bringing those ideas to clients is exciting for me. I love that.
Yeah, and the fact that that's rooted in their ideal customer as well means that that is going to have a much greater chance of landing than something you could probably have picked up some sensible sounding ideas in a room together, not having talked to a customer, but you lose that competitive edge and that, as you say, that key insights that just unlocks the whole thing for you. And look where you've ended up.
Yeah, and it helps the brand stand out when there are just so many brands that exist now, right? Everything feels competitive, whether it's you just shouting louder or having like better hooks on your ads than the person sitting next to you in your product category, or we don't have the same budget to outsource this big epic brand campaign on a mountain with sponsored skiers. When you're comparing yourself to other people in your industry, yes, it's great to have that aspiration of, this person inspires us. But when it can sometimes feel quite debilitating and you're just trying to do the same thing as them, but in a slightly different way, or have a different message, but use the same processes. I think this process helps brands stand apart because these human conversations aren't replicable. It's your customers, not their customers. Yes, there may be demographic or psychographic details that are similar between the two, but no one can copy those ideas that come from those conversations with the individuals that I speak to. So yeah, it's exciting and I think empowering for brands to have that.
Yeah, certainly. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows, though, is it? Are there any particular areas that are less fun?
When the weather's rubbish and there's no surf. No. The things, what do I find the most difficult? Definitely for me right now, like in this moment, I've replaced my Instagram scrolling with LinkedIn scrolling. And I like to think of myself as a bit of a sponge, and I just want to see all aspects of a business and see how, say, my process can inform, an ad strategy or a new video campaign or the text that you use to get people to sign up to your email list. And I'm definitely one of those people who can just get drawn in by the LinkedIn scrolling. For me, it's just setting those boundaries of I'm going to be inspired and excited by what other people are saying and how I can continue that conversation maybe in my own content, but drawing a line of this is as much space I have in my mental sponge to absorb, and this is as much as you're going to get this week.
Yeah, they're very good, these platforms, at just encouraging you to have a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. It's, yeah, but they're glorified drug dealers, essentially. Just a little bit more of a taste.
That's a great analogy. It's so true.
So we've skipped through to where you are now, but I'd like to wind the clock back a little bit and just get a bit of a sense of your first real experience of marketing. What that was like, kind of things you were doing. Well, did it line up with what you were expecting to go into?
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned, I did my work experience at surf school when I was 16. There were other people in my year who went to Superdrug or a pie shop, I think someone went to, and they just didn't really care. And I went down to Cornwall. I was living like near Reading at the time. Went down to Cornwall. It was off season, so it was just me and the instructors. We surfed quite a lot. We did kids club, and being in that environment where you were helping someone overcome a personal barrier and seeing how they reacted when they actually overcame that was like, I was addicted to that. I absolutely loved it. Just learning how to communicate with people to a point where they believed in themselves and they would try something that before they never thought was possible or they'd failed at 20 times before. How can you keep people going and just build that drive in them and that self-belief? And so when I finished school, I continued doing summer seasons. I coached probably for about 12 years in total. So over that time, so much of it was spent trying to teach the same techniques to different people. So a 10-year-old who didn't really want to be there and their mum was forcing them to do surf school because it was glorified babysitting. The mum who's come in with the kids, who's maybe a little bit competitive with the kid, or like a 70-year-old who's doing it for their 70th birthday just to prove that they can do it, or someone from the army, or, the slick suited and booted, stockbroker from London. They all come with their own backstory and their own way of understanding things and absorbing information. And so over the years, you develop all these different strategies to help people learn the same skills, but you need to be adaptable because a skill that you're teaching someone for the first time, they could get it in like 3 waves, but a different person in the same class could have been trying it for, a year and they still haven't got it. Like, how can you adapt yourself to help people? And the mindset that I had of right, I need to extend my season because I don't want to work in a cafe or in a restaurant in the winter when there's no surf lessons. What can I do? Start to learn about the basic principles of marketing and realized that is what I'm doing every day. I'm speaking to different people. I'm trying to help them overcome something. I might have to adapt my language or the analogies that I use to help people make a decision to try something different. And that's the way that I see marketing of you're speaking to different audiences. One brand may have, 3 different ICPs, but it's the same end result that you want. How can you adapt your language and communicate with them in slightly different ways to communicate the same thing, make them believe in themselves or believe in the brand and see that, their past solutions may not have worked for whatever reason, but it's still worth their energy to just keep trying at something. I worked for a couple of ski schools in Japan and did winter seasons, and it was very much the same thing, even though it was on the other side of the world and we're talking about snow rather than the sea. It's physical challenges, it's mental blocks, but how can you teach the same thing to different people and make them believe in themselves? And I think that's really powerful concept in marketing, that it's, you're not just selling a thing to do a job, you're making someone into someone else. You're making them, sometimes changing their mindset. And a lot of the clients that I work with, it's about that mindset shift of I want you to continue to believe in yourself, that you can do something, and the product is the facilitator for that.
And at that point, you're plugging these gaps essentially between seasons. Were you looking at it from the perspective of, I want to be a marketer and I will make it work this way, or were you looking at it from the, look, I just need to fill some time here. Actually, I think I might be quite good here, and I can translate what I'm doing into this space. Which way round were you
I
looking from?
never saw myself being a marketer. I think I probably imagined I was going to be that like infamous 70-year-old surf instructor down in Cornwall that had been doing it since she was 16, and everyone had to come down and see the 70-year-old surf instructor because I literally couldn't imagine doing anything else. So I did an English literature degree, and everyone says that must help you so much in your job. I can string a sentence together, but what I learned in my English degree really, I don't think has a huge amount to do with what I do today. Grammar rules go out the window. My lecturers would probably be very disappointed at the number of sentences that I start with the word and. But I enjoyed writing, and I had a blog at the time that I would write about, experiences in the surf, helping people overcome surfing mental challenges. So I was writing bits and pieces anyway, and I thought, well, I'll just do it, on the quiet days when I'm sitting in the office and there are no lessons. So that it came from a place of like trying to fill time. What can I do with the skills that I have and the experiences that I've had? And at that point, a couple of other, I don't know, I must have been like in my late 20s, like mid 20s. A few other businesses were like, oh, you're writing blogs. Can you do some for us? And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I think I made my brother a website at that point for his business. Then COVID hit, and I thought, well, I have these skills. I might try and build something out of it. And then that was where the transition shift happened from full-time coaching and a bit of writing on the side to not really doing any surf coaching anymore and just writing professionally.
Usually, what I tend to see in stories like this is there's a few early experiences, some time spent in house in a marketing team or function at either a slightly larger business, and then deciding to strike out on your own. Now, at no point did you really go in house in that in that same way, and nor did you either go agency side. Was that all by design?
No, I don't think so. If you want to call it in-house for the surf brands and the ski brands, they the people that I worked with were just incredibly passionate people who loved skiing or they loved surfing. And they couldn't always put down on paper, translate that passion and that enthusiasm. The people that I worked for, a bloke called Pete down here in Cornwall was probably worked for the longest, and a woman called Jen in Japan. They had been surfing and skiing respectively their, maybe not their whole lives, but it was their life and everything revolved around it. And when people met them, there was that raw energy, and not in a performative way, but really genuine obsession with what they were doing, and it rubbed off on their clients. And both these business owners had people coming back year after year after year, and they were obsessed with what they did. And that then translated to their clients of, well, we literally have the best ski or surf coach ever, because yeah, they're in their like 30s or 40s, but they're like a forever child, and they just had the most dedicated, loyal customer base. But when it came to translating that onto a page or a web page or a caption, it didn't always come across. So I sort of saw, I guess in hindsight, saw myself as a bit of a translator or middle woman to help them translate that into, copy. So it wasn't right, I'm going to, work on the marketing for your brand and be very strategic. Because there was no one else doing it, they let me be very experimental with the blogs that we wrote or the web pages that I wrote. And so then when I stopped working for them and I started working for myself, I think that's just my mindset of, well, I want to meet these really passionate business owners, or I had met these passionate business owners, and they weren't able to or didn't want to sit down at a computer for a really long time. They just wanted to be going skiing. And the more time they're spending on the computer, the less time skiing they'd have. So I just saw myself as that translator, and that I don't think there was a real intentional thought process or strategy of, well, I'm going to enter the world of marketing now. It was very much I guess, again, a human-led decision. And nowadays I do work with agencies every now and again who have a job and they need messaging, or to turn the messaging into language on the page that's customer facing. So it was never intentional. There are moments now where I think, what would have happened if I had gone in-house to do for and be hired as a marketer rather than just sort of do it accidentally or incidentally. I wonder what would have happened, but I like to think that my process is slightly different, and that I'm really attached to that humanness of businesses and the humanness of their customers, because I haven't had someone else tell me a specific process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you haven't found yourself perhaps having that human interaction eroded away slightly as much as some teams and individuals can have as well, especially when, well, you need to be experts in every single channel, and now AI. One thing I did want to go back to is this idea of working with really passionate business owners who need help bottling their essence and taking that out into the wider world. Does that come with its own set of challenges, though? Yeah, this isn't just their business; this is their life. Did you find that came with its own challenges to navigate, where getting things done, pushing the envelope, having to have uncomfortable conversations sometimes, where you have to deliver some uncomfortable truths, perhaps, for what they're doing right now isn't as effective as it could be?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge when I'm working with really small founder-led businesses where they don't have a big team and they are still taking on a lot of the roles within the business, they're wearing lots of different hats, is that when I get feedback from people, at least it used to be in the early days, before I understood how to ask people for feedback, was, it doesn't feel right, or it doesn't feel like me. And it was, all of that feedback was around feeling. And there are two different ways of looking at business. In my eyes, I've learned you can either do it on feeling and you drive everything and you drive all the decisions, but you're not looking a lot at your customers, or you can let your customers lead. And I am very for that approach. I'm sure there's definitely a middle ground, but if I have to choose one or the other, I always want to let the customers lead with what we say, because they're the ones that make the decision whether they want to buy from you or trust you or spend their time with you. So the problem that I found really early days was me almost butting heads with people because I wanted to say something because their customers, it was driven by their customers. It was something that they said was worrying them, or was a decision-making element or criteria, or what they viewed of the competition, versus, oh, we don't really want to say that because it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel like me. And with really small businesses, the founders are usually very emotionally, someone used the phrase emotionally married to your business. The money they put into it is out of their back pocket. And so I looked at, like, how can I ask people for better feedback? How can I prepare people for this conversation? How can I preempt this potential friction point? And so that came about by, at the very start of working with the client, say, explain to them everything is customer focused. Yes, we need to make sure that it aligns with your brand values, or your brand personality, and maybe review your messaging against what the customers say. Maybe something needs to change, but let them know that something might not feel right, but are their customers going to relate to it? Quite possibly, if it's something that I've gathered from surveys, interviews, which is always the foundation of the relationship I have with clients, and the foundation of any project that we do together. So yeah, then when it actually gets to feedback, I generally ask people two questions, and that's almost really all the feedback I want is it aligned with your brand values? If not, why not? Is it going to resonate with your customers? If not, why not? And that is really all the only information that I want, because I kind of don't care how you feel about something. You've got to have a reason why we've got to change this headline or this paragraph here. And it's got to be rooted in the brand values and the customers.
Yeah, and I'm just mentally replaying quite a few experiences over my own career, where and I'm sure you've heard all variations of this as well. I don't like that colour, Alice. I don't like that sentence. Oh, I'm not sure about that. And very often they don't come with any because,
Mm.
or even with a but could we try this? I think there always needs to be a second part to the feedback that's given. So you've got some very important ways of asking for feedback, but I would also challenge people on, actually, when we're giving feedback, we also need to be mindful of just what we're giving someone like you to actually work with. Me go, don't like it. That doesn't help you, does it?
And I mean, really early days, like my first couple of clients, I would take that feedback and then I'd sit looking at the copy I'd written and think, how do I change this? And I didn't know what I was changing or why or I thought I knew why I was changing it, or I was guessing, but it was, I guess, a process of trial and error of, okay, well, I've got this piece of feedback from a client that the tone needs to change to be less formal. Okay, great. But what do we change it to? And I would sit there and stare at a piece of paper and be nervous clicking that, send button to send them the second draft, thinking, is this what they wanted? And it's not what the brand wants, it's what the clients need to hear. And it was definitely the early days, it was definitely a lot of trial and error, and a lot of scenarios where I took really vague, generic, non-specific, emotion-led feedback tried to adapt and didn't write what the client wanted. So it would be another round of revisions. But yeah, so it was early days. It was a lot of trial and error, but actually giving your client boundaries, I found, is so valuable. It's not restrictive. It just gives them something to focus on so they can give you valuable feedback. When you just say, like, I would like feedback on this 5-page website, you know, they're like, oh, can we change this word? I don't like this word. Or can we change this section because I think this story is a bit more important, and this, that, and the other. And then it comes from a place of, I mean, their feedback comes from a place of what they like and what they don't, what they've seen other people do elsewhere that they think works, but they have actually no data or proof to base it on. And giving your clients those guardrails is a lot easier for them. They don't have to sit there for 3 days to review your copy. They've got 2 questions in mind as they're going through, and it helps really, I've found, slicken up the process of feedback. And yes, you might have a difficult conversation because they still say they really don't like something, but they don't have a reason why. But I think, setting those guardrails, I think, is really important. It's not restrictive or debilitating for them. Like, they shouldn't feel like they're losing control. They should just feel like, like they hired you to do a job, and you're going to help them give you feedback so that what you collectively put out into the world is going to get a better feedback from the customer.
I think the way you've paired that as well with suitably prepping the client as well. So yeah, you're a little bit like a doctor here, going, look, this is what I'm going to be doing. Look, this might hurt a little bit, and then with your two simple questions, yeah, I can imagine you get from version 1 to version 2 actually pretty damn quickly, and you're not inviting lots of meaningless comments because you've asked me for some feedback. I might actually not have that much to say, but it's the goal is so wide that I almost feel compelled to go, oh well, actually, could you put that comma there? I'm not sure about this word, because I just feel like I have to feedback something, anything, even if it's nonsense.
Yeah. Having that open-ended question of, do you have any feedback? People are like, well, I have to give her feedback. And then it gets into those comma placement arguments.
As we're talking about developing content and copy, that whole customer-led approach is really interesting in the fact that, yeah, it's quite surprising that more people aren't looking explicitly through that lens all the time. But yes, could you just bring that to life for me in the sense of what does that actually look like from start to end? How do you approach it, and how are you thinking about it as you go? Yeah.
So brief writing is something that probably in the latter 50% of my job I've really honed in on. To start with, it was, again, a bit open-ended. I assumed the client knew we were on the same page, but now I've realized, in the last 4 years or so, like, writing those briefs is paramount, because I see myself not as just a copywriter or content writer, but I'm coming at it from the lens of conversion copywriting. And really what that means is we're inviting and encouraging a customer to take an action. And that could be to click onto a second page, to open an email, to click a button in an email, to sign up with a form, to book a discovery call, to buy a product, to put something in your cart. Whatever that action is, we want it to be measurable. So setting a brief where we can track the success of what we've done compared to the control, and we can optimize at the end. Setting that brief is super important. Understanding who we're talking to, and not just a generalized audience, but thinking, okay, we've got 3 different audiences. We need to speak to one of them, because speaking to all of them, as we all know, is difficult. It makes things generalized, but the more specificity we can use to a specific audience, the more emotion we can bring into it to relate to their real life. So setting a brief is number 1. And in some cases, we don't have that ideal client set straight off, because step 2 is talking to customers. And whether it is an email sequence or a landing page or an about page, I want to understand what that decision-making process is for a customer. So I'll understand, before they used X product that we're selling or X email list that they've just signed up for, what was their decision-making process? What alternative solutions had they used before? What beliefs do they have about this product category? What are the other, different routes that they could go down rather than using this product or signing up to this email list? What intrinsically motivates them to do the thing that your product does, or the thing they're going to be engaging with? So for a surf lesson, it would be, or, for a running company, getting outside, being in nature. What intrinsically motivates them? What is that like internal drive that makes them want to be in the outdoors? And getting to that emotional, psychological heart of it is often where you find those big ideas and those little golden nuggets that you can underpin throughout the whole funnel or the whole page or whatever. And so once I've interviewed customers and we've sent out surveys to people.
You generally tend to do both. So you will do some surveys to grab a larger sample of data, and then pair that with some in-depth interviews, because I guess some of those sort of intrinsic motivations that sort of bubble away slightly below the subconscious, they're never going to come out on a survey, are they? You have to go dig like a little mole trying to find that nugget.
Absolutely. I often use surveys for qualitative results. You're asking similar questions. Obviously, they're going to be more surface level. We try and make sure it's really clear that it's anonymous, so people can say, actually, I thought this thing was crap, and it's not going to come back to them. They don't feel embarrassed to reveal things. So once I've got all of the data from that, going through and passing it to find out common themes, common obstacles, hesitations, motivations, drivers, so we can see which are the most prominent things that come up again and again. And that gives us an idea of what the key messages need to be. But the qualitative data comes from the transcripts of the interviews. So we'll try and interview people who've given those most common results. But if we go back to that brief writing exercise, if we are, say, selling, so recently I've written a funnel that sells an online course to help people read waves who are surfing on their own. It's very niche, but it's actually a brilliant resource. And what we found when we did the survey results were that actually more ideal customers than the brand realized. There was, the busy professional who might go surf wave pools, but so they don't spend a lot of the time in the ocean, but they are that like analytical thinker. But then you have someone who's been surfing for 30 years and they still feel like they're in that beginner stage. Then we have an ideal client that is, 50, 60 years old, they've retired or they're close to retiring and they wanted a new challenge in their life. And just through those survey results, we understood these new personas. So we could go back to the brief and think, okay, which one of these people do we want to target specifically with this particular funnel for now? So going back and forth from your synthesis of all your research to help just refine that brief, something that we usually do just to make sure that we're really specific about the people we want to talk to. So then we take the survey results and those key messages, the sort of push factors and the pull factors and the intrinsic motivators to map out the messaging, messaging architecture throughout each of those touch points or throughout the page that we're writing. And then we use the voice of customer from the interview transcripts to add like texture and color to that, so that we're using the same analogies that they use. We are explaining the problems in the same way that they do. So that actually could just look like copy and pasting sections from the interview to put it in to bring that voice and character. So combining that with a brand's voice if they're specific about it. And then filling in the blanks with, making sure those key messages are hit. I'll usually wireframe it into kind of a design for the page or the email. It goes to launch and then we optimize. So once that's gone out into the world, we'll get results when a specific number of people have gone through that funnel or seen the page or converted. We will then revisit and say, okay, well, in this sequence, more people converted on this email rather than this one. And again, that conversion might not be buying something. It could just be clicking through to the website or signing up for an event. But as I said at the start, we want to be clear on what those conversions we are aiming for in that brief. So when it comes to optimization, we can say, what opportunities do we have to tweak the language or the messaging or the headline or the button positioning or the introductory paragraph that's going to hook people to then bump up those conversion rates. So there's a bit in back and forth at that point to just see if we can tweak things just so that the brand's getting more people involved in their ecosystem, more people trusting them, and more people, sometimes just getting out of their comfort zone.
And at this point, you're starting to be able to demonstrate, well, actually, this new version of the copy here with audience insight and language performs 10% better than your previous version. So even if there is a little bit of I'm not sure, something feels a bit off about it, but actually that's objectively performing better.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start to open the door to be able to perhaps push the envelope a little bit more, because in your client's view, you've earned your stripes. So you go, okay, well actually Alice has done some great work here in this area. Actually, let's let her rip elsewhere and see what can happen. But you've taken the longer road to get there, and you should get a special award for not mentioning AI once throughout that whole piece, which is perhaps a sad state of affairs. But we are where we are right now.
It's not to say that I don't use it. I do love it, but when I see busy marketing departments in brands where they might not have a specialist copywriter, or they have a ridiculous content calendar where they need to bosh content out continually, it gets subbed in for that human bit. And most copywriters know various different copywriting frameworks. And, if you just Google copywriting frameworks, you'll find a bunch of them. For me, the fatal flaw is asking ChatGPT or whatever large language model you're using to write content that is based on assumptions of your customers, other people's market research or customer research, generalizations about who you're talking about, or asking ChatGPT to actually come up with your ideal customer profiles. That's when the output gets really generic, because what AI is doing is delivering the sum average of everything else that exists on the internet. And what I try and do with my process is encourage people to get at least that human data at the start, the real language, the real emotional insights from people that AI cannot generate itself, at least for the input, because then at least your output's going to be better and it's not going to be assuming anything, generalizing anything. It's going to be hyper specific and as human as you can.
Yeah, because I could imagine in your particular world, the stereotype that AI might latch onto is ripped, floppy-haired male with a surfboard. Yeah, I don't have to give it too much thought to sort of extrapolate. Okay, where it could probably end up, and actually, what you mentioned right back at the beginning of that quite broad church of people who rock up to learn how to surf. You completely miss that, and before you know it, you're writing stuff that feels like it's on Home and Away or something like that.
I watched Neighbours more than Home and Away when I was younger, but yeah, I mean, surfing is a great analogy for that to what the internet thinks surfers are. People in Hawaii who've got long blonde hair and have been getting barreled since they were about 6 years old. It's not cliche because there are people like that who exist in the world. But if you're bringing it to the a UK audience who's never done it before, and yeah, okay, that might be an aspirational view of what surfing might be like. This, blonde hair, blue-eyed Hawaiian surfer. It's not relatable, is it? It's not. You want the sort of the gritty bits. You want to know what keeps people up at night and how they got their bruises and what keeps them going, even though they've fallen off and swallowed about 4 liters of water the last time.
Exactly. And I run my town's local cycling club. There's a similar thing as well in that world where there's a particular connotation and stereotypical image of what a road cyclist is. Actually, when I look around all of my different members, we'd never all meet in a pub and congregate and gravitate towards each other. We're all completely and utterly different different people. But if I try to take a shortcut and got AI to write me some stuff to promote a road cycling club, then I would probably cut off 80% of my membership overnight. But I'd be sat there thinking, this looks and reads and reads great. Have at it. I mean, we've prioritised speed over quality here, which I think we've all got to be really, really careful about because it's bloody tempting. It's really tempting when you're busy and under for caution. You've got 50 million different different priorities. It is really easy to reach for the magic button, and we've got to. I think we have got to resist it a little. Use it where it makes sense, but not be led by it.
Yeah, I think the main things that I use it for are organizing messages on a page, seeing if the message, the sort of architectural hierarchy that we've got makes logical sense, and asking AI to give me alternative suggestions or what have I missed out, and just be that analytical, objective point of view. But also, obstacles. So if I put, say, like a page that I've written in and say, where might there still be skepticism that the reader feels, just giving me an alternative solution to say, maybe you need to back up this point with this, or the big thing for me is specificity. And that is essentially, how does this product or this thing that I want you to do or take part in, how does it actually manifest in your own life? It's going past the features, benefits element and thinking about actual outcomes and understanding in your life, how's this going to change things? And the specificity of bringing as much detail and texture to that helps you stay away from it feeling like it's written by AI. Even if it writes your first draft and you just add in that extra specificity, that's the kind of things you can get from those interviews to understand, how does this play out in your life, if you do act, if you don't act. But creating an image in someone's head, and that makes the product you're using, the product that they might be using, or the event they might be going to, feel psychologically closer to them, so things feel more possible. So for me, I can start to think, okay, maybe this was written with AI if there's no specificity, if I can't create that image in my head. So even if you are using AI, add in specificity and it will make it feel less like AI wrote it.
What success would you say you're most proud of?
Last year I got asked to go up to Kendal Mountain Festival, which, if you've not heard of it before, it's like Cannes but for outdoor sports. I think there was something like 30,000 people that go up every year. It's the biggest film festival outside of Banff in the world, and they had a little fringe event where they had a few marketers speaking on stage. It was an event run by an outdoor agency, and everyone speaking was a marketer and someone spoke about AI. I was asked to go up and speak, and I was on stage next to the CMO of Finisterre, people who'd worked at Nike, Tommy Hilfiger, and there were 120 odd people in the audience, and that was a real big moment for me. Being recognized outside of the clients that I work with one-to-one. I had people stopping me in the street 2 days later saying that they'd come to the event and how much they enjoyed it. They are running, hopefully, a Manchester one later on in the year, which I've been asked to go back to. So it was terrifying, but I loved it once I was on the stage. And
How did that come about?
someone reached out to me on LinkedIn. I'm quite vocal on LinkedIn, and I try to connect my experiences surfing and in the outdoors to what I do. Very much linked to what we've spoken about today, about those one-to-one interactions and how they inform my work and my process. And one of the guys who works there, Luke, reached out and said, we want a diversity of voices, and we've got people talking about AI. We've got someone talking about, the wider marketing strategy, but we want people to make something really actionable as well. There was someone talking about sustainability and building community with brand. And because I, at the time, was talking a lot about email marketing, they wanted a real diverse point of view from all the different individuals. And so I spoke about email marketing with outdoor brands and how there's a real disconnect between the big emotive pieces where someone's standing on top of the mountain and they're like doing backflips in like chest deep powder, and the actual email campaigns you get from the same brands. The emotion that you have at the start just kind of disappears when you look at a lot of these, actually some of the legacy brands that have built their company over 30, 40, 50 years. They rely on that recognition of their name and legacy. So it was really hopefully an empowering message to smaller brands that they can stand out versus those legacy brands. If they maintain that emotion, they might not have had the budget to get big, Candy Tovex or Alex Honnold or someone representing their brand, but just by maintaining that emotion from top of funnel to bottom of funnel, specifically we're talking about emails, can help them stand out and win against the bigger brands. So yeah, it was a very exciting moment for me.
Very good. And let's look at the other side of the coin then. Any standout learning experiences that still stick with you to this day?
I guess it's not when I knew I wanted to be in marketing or I had actually entered the world of marketing, but being at the surf school and speaking to people one-to-one and getting that immediate feedback from people, developing my approach, changing from just being an instructor to a coach and a mentor, and developing my own way of communicating. Then when we translated that to the blogs and we increased traffic and we got measurable revenue results at the ski school when I was the only one solely responsible for the marketing. In hindsight, it's a massive learning for me, and it's changed everything. I wouldn't be where I am today, and I don't know if I'd be as passionate about what I do today if I hadn't have had those experiences with people in the water pooing their pants because they didn't want to nosedive or get face full of sand, or we were trying to get them out back and surf a bigger wave that they have ever surfed before. With the benefit of hindsight, that was really the biggest learning experience for me.
And you not being someone who likes to particularly stand still, what's next for you? Anything anything on the list at the moment?
I am in the process of writing a book. Whether it's a big one, I think it's going to be an ebook, which combines my experience and makes actually actionable for people, and they have strategies and processes that they can use in their own marketing, whether it's a freelancer or someone in-house, how my story has helped me get to where I am, and then marketing strategies that other people can use with their own clients. There's whisperings of a retreat along those lines where we will obviously get everyone to go surfing as well as doing some marketing workshops. That might be in a few years' time, but the ebook will be hopefully coming out maybe when this is launched. I might have to hold myself. You might have to hold me accountable for that. But if not, very
Okay, so if there's a link not in the description anywhere, then Alice hasn't done it.
Yeah,
so there you go. There's your motivation.
Send me an angry letter if I haven't done it by then.
And just to wrap us up then as well, what's the best piece of career advice you've received, and what would your own advice be for someone looking to get ahead?
Keep your own personal experience in the business. I joined a marketing membership probably 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and it was really how to shift your perspective of work and others' perspective of you from being a freelancer to being a business owner. And I think there's a bit of a unwritten belief about freelancers in that they're order takers, and at least in the copywriting world, a brand can come to you as a copywriter and say, right, we need 500 words here and we want this, that, and the other. And I joined this membership to help me communicate how I was a strategist, and yes, I'll do the execution as well, but it comes from my ideas and my experience and my expertise. And it was so much focused on standard operating procedures and streamlining and getting a VA and making sure that the value for customers was apparent absolutely everywhere, and it all needed to be backed up by data and research. And yes, it was 100% helpful, but in that transition to being more professional and not an order taker, I thought, okay, well, my messaging needs to be more professional. And I really took myself out of that. And my surf school story, as you all know now, just disappeared from there. And I was selling deliverables. I was selling packages and not me. And in doing so, I turned my business into something that so many other people could do. There was no differentiators. It was, apart from the statistics that I could show of, click rates or additional traffic or additional revenue that I'd been able to gather.
But everyone trots those out, don't they? It's identikit marketing stuff. It's for price of entry. Yeah, everyone has that stuff. How do you then stand apart?
Yeah, and I've realised working with a mentor over the last year or so that Alice as part of the business and my story is so completely paramount to the results I get because of my process, but my process comes from my story and my experience surfing, which I don't think there are that many copywriters who have surf coached for 12 years. And so the big lesson was that, yes, by wanting to look more professional, I took myself out of the equation, because part of me, I guess, just thought that that wasn't professional, and that was the mistake, I guess. And so we've built me back into the business so that, you know, if I disappear and someone else takes over my business, it doesn't function, which is, it's exciting, and it's a nice place to be back there again, rather than being that sort of competitive space of selling deliverables. I'm now selling my experience, to get people on board, and I think that helps attract people with similar values to me, which is really wonderful, because I get on with the people that I work with, more or less, as well, which just makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah, and life's too short at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much for that conversation today. Really interesting journey in itself, and loads of really practical stuff for someone to take away, and particularly when thinking about how they can put customers more at the heart of what they're doing. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, and thanks to you for listening as well. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to future episodes, leave a review, or share with your friends and colleagues. See you next time.